The moment that old videotape started playing, my brother's face lost every bit of color. He had spent years telling everyone that our father loved him more than me. He built his whole life around that story, and the rest of the family believed it. But nobody expected Dad's own voice to destroy that lie in front of everyone. If you're into real family stories that remind you how the truth always finds a way out, I'd appreciate you subscribing to Family Betrayal. And one more thing before we go further. The faces, photos, background clips, and scenes you see are only there to help tell the story. They're not meant to represent the real people involved. Growing up, I always felt like the extra child in my own home. My brother, Eric, got the attention, the praise, and every opportunity. When Dad bought him a truck at 16, everyone called it a reward for working hard. When I asked for help paying for community college, I was told to figure it out myself. After hearing, "Your father just understands Eric better" for years, I finally stopped asking questions. Dad wasn't a cruel man. He just seemed distant with me. Every birthday felt different. Every holiday, Eric sat beside him while I ended up across the room. Even relatives joked that I must have been adopted. I laughed with them, but every joke stayed with me long after everyone went home. Then Dad got sick. The diagnosis came fast, and suddenly the family gathered around him like nothing had ever been wrong. Eric immediately took charge. He handled appointments, controlled phone calls, and somehow became the only person Dad seemed to trust. Whenever I showed up, Eric always had a reason why Dad was too tired to see me. "He's resting," he'd say. Or, "The doctor said he shouldn't get emotional." I believed him because I wanted to. A few weeks before Dad passed away, I tried one last time. I stood outside his bedroom door holding an old family photo. Before I could knock, I heard Eric's voice inside. "He doesn't need to know you came." I froze. Then I heard something hit the floor, followed by Dad trying to say something I couldn't understand. When Eric walked out, he smiled at me like nothing had happened. "He fell asleep," he said. I left with a feeling I couldn't explain. After the funeral, Eric stood in front of everyone and confidently announced that Dad had always loved him more. He said Dad had made that clear many times, and nobody challenged him. Nobody except our aunt. She quietly looked at me before saying 5 words that changed everything. "I found your father's tapes." At that moment, I had no idea those forgotten home videos were about to reveal a truth none of us were prepared to hear. I honestly thought the tapes would be nothing more than old birthday parties and blurry Christmas mornings. Dad had carried that camcorder everywhere when we were kids. Most of us laughed about it for years because he recorded everything. I never imagined those dusty boxes sitting in my aunt's attic would become the most important evidence our family had ever seen. Eric wasn't smiling anymore. He tried to brush it off. "Those tapes are 30 years old. They don't matter." But something in his voice sounded nervous instead of confident. Our aunt ignored him. She explained that Dad had asked her to keep several boxes years earlier after a leak damaged part of our basement. Nobody ever came back for them, and after Dad died, she remembered they were still sitting in her storage room. The following Saturday, the whole family gathered at my parents' house to sort through everything before selling it. Cousins, uncles, neighbors, everyone was there. The tapes were stacked inside an old cardboard box with faded handwriting. Family memories. Do not throw away. As we connected an old VCR to the living room television, Eric suddenly stood up. "This is a waste of time," he snapped. "We're here to clean the house, not watch movies." Nobody answered him. The first tape showed birthday parties, camping trips, fishing weekends, and Christmas mornings. Dad laughed constantly. Mom smiled in almost every frame. For a while, it felt comforting. Then something caught my attention. Every time Dad recorded me, he spoke differently. "There he is, my quiet thinker. There goes my little helper. I hope he never loses that heart." I hadn't heard those words in decades. My chest tightened. Maybe I hadn't imagined everything after all. Then another tape showed Dad teaching me how to fix an old lawn mower while Eric refused to help because he wanted to hang out with friends. Dad looked into the camera afterward and laughed. "One day, Jason will understand why I wanted him beside me." I looked around the room. Everyone had gone silent. Eric shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Before anyone could say a word, he stood up and reached for the remote. "That's enough." But my uncle grabbed his wrist. "No," he said firmly. "We're watching every tape." Eric's face turned red. For the first time in my life, I saw fear instead of confidence in my brother's eyes. About 20 minutes later, my aunt pulled out one final cassette. Unlike the others, it didn't have a family label. Across the front, written in Dad's handwriting, were 6 chilling words. "Play this if I'm gone." The entire room stopped breathing as my uncle slowly pushed the tape into the VCR. The room was so quiet I could hear the VCR humming. Nobody reached for a drink. Nobody checked a phone. Even the kids stopped whispering. My uncle pressed play, and after a few seconds of static, my father appeared on the screen. He looked older, thinner, and tired, but his eyes were clear. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm no longer here. And if my family is together, there's something I have to fix before it's too late." My heart started pounding. Dad took a long breath. "I've carried a regret for years. I thought staying silent would keep this family together. But silence only gave lies room to grow." He looked directly into the camera. "Jason, if you're seeing this, I need you to know something. I have loved you every single day of your life. If you ever believed otherwise, that failure belongs to me, not to you." I couldn't hold back the tears. Around the room, I heard quiet sobs. Then Dad said the words that changed everything. "Eric convinced people I favored him because I rarely corrected him. Every time I tried to spend time with Jason, someone interrupted, or I was told Jason wasn't interested. Later I discovered that wasn't true." The room turned toward Eric. Dad continued. "More than once, I wrote letters to Jason that never reached him. Birthday cards disappeared. Invitations disappeared. Even the college check I mailed him was returned to me unopened. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. That check could have changed my life." Dad lowered his head. "I eventually learned who had been keeping us apart." Eric jumped to his feet. "This is ridiculous." He's confused. He was sick. Nobody believed him. Dad's voice grew firmer. "Eric, if you're watching this, I still love you because you're my son. But love doesn't excuse what you did. You let jealousy become your identity. You wanted to win a competition that never existed." Eric tried to walk out, but my uncle blocked the doorway. "No," he said. "You're staying." Dad reached beside him and picked up a thick envelope. "I've left documents with my attorney. They explained everything I discovered during my final year. I wanted the truth to come from me, not from rumors." My aunt quietly whispered, "The lawyer has that envelope." Eric's hands began to shake. For years, he had controlled the family story. Now every lie was collapsing in front of everyone. Then Dad smiled gently into the camera. "But there is one more truth, one that nobody in this room knows yet. And when my attorney opens that envelope, this family will finally understand why I changed my will just 3 weeks before I died." The video ended. No one spoke. A knock suddenly echoed through the front door. When my uncle opened it, Dad's attorney was standing there, holding the sealed envelope in his hands. Nobody moved. Dad's attorney stepped into the living room, looked around at our stunned faces, and quietly placed the sealed envelope on the coffee table. I was instructed not to deliver this until after Mr. Harrison's final recording had been viewed by the entire family. Eric's breathing became heavier. The attorney opened the envelope and pulled out several documents, copies of bank records, and handwritten notes from Dad. He spoke calmly. "During the last year of his life, your father hired a private investigator because he believed someone was interfering with his mail and personal affairs." The room exploded with whispers. The investigator's report showed that birthday cards addressed to me had been hidden in the garage. My college tuition check had been intercepted before I ever knew it existed. Several letters Dad wrote to me had been found inside an old locked toolbox that only Eric had access to. Then came the final piece. Dad had secretly recorded a conversation after confronting Eric. The attorney pressed play on a small recorder. Eric's younger voice filled the room. "I just wanted you to need me more than him. If Jason stayed close to you, I'd never be enough." Dad answered quietly, "You never had to compete for my love. You created a battle that only existed in your own heart." When the recording ended, nobody defended Eric. My mother covered her face and cried harder than I had ever seen. My aunt shook her head in disbelief. My cousins stared at Eric as if they didn't recognize him anymore. Eric finally broke. He collapsed into a chair and whispered, "I'm sorry." For years, I thought hearing those words would heal everything. It didn't. Some wounds don't disappear because someone apologizes. They heal because you finally stop believing the lie that caused them. Dad's final letter was addressed only to me. It read, "Jason, if this day ever comes, don't spend the rest of your life trying to punish your brother. Let the truth do what anger never can. I wasn't perfect, but I hope you always remember this. I never stopped loving you. I cried harder than I ever had. Not because I had lost my father, but because, after believing for nearly 30 years that I wasn't enough, I finally heard the words I had needed my entire life. We sold the house a few months later. I used the money Dad left me to finish the education I had once given up on. I built a life I was proud of. Eric chose to leave town. We rarely speak now, but I no longer carry the weight of proving my worth to anyone. The old videotape didn't just expose my brother. It gave me my father back. If there's one lesson I learned, it's this. Lies can survive for years, but the truth only needs one honest moment to change everything. Now I want to ask you something. If you discovered someone had stolen years of love from your family, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Share your answer in the comments because I'd really like to hear your perspective. If this story moved you, please share it with a friend or family member who believes the truth always matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Family Betrayal for more unforgettable stories where hidden secrets, broken families, and hard-earned justice remind us that love should never have to compete with lies.